Hi and welcome to SCW, the wrestling channel here on YouTube.com. Thank you for choosing the channel and choosing the video. Please subscribe right now. Leave any comments in the comment section. Please like and share the video as well. Ask SCW is back once again answering your questions in the wrestling community. Got lots of questions for you here today based on WWE, AEW and Impact Wrestling, and there'll be a whole host of more questions as well. Retro and up to date, including the first 4 questions today will be based on the new stable coming into WWE Retribution. So plenty to get into. You can follow me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all should be covered on your screen right now. And you can also subscribe here on YouTube and leave the hashtag AskSCW if you want a question featured in the next episode. But without further ado, let's get into our first question this week, which of course I said is based on Retribution. And it comes from Mike, Italian Habs Mike. And he's got 2 questions on Retribution to kick off this week. It says, how would you book the Retribution storyline, and do you think that they will change people until they are revealed? To me, if done right, it can be a very good angle, and it should be if people on Retribution are mad over how NXT stars have been booked on Raw and SmackDown. I think that that's a great shout, personally, with everything you've put there. I mean, the Retribution angle has been with mixed reviews so far, but I'm willing to let this play out. I think, personally, like you say, if done correctly, this can be a very exciting storyline. Now, I must admit, I was a bit lackluster after Raw last week. I felt that the way that was done was very juvenile. They were almost cowardly with the way that they destroyed the generator, almost kind of like teenagers. It felt a little bit like it just didn't wash well with me. And it was a very rushed angle when so much was promised in a tweet before Raw. But what we got on SmackDown was very much more like it. Now, I know a lot of people have compared it to the Nexus. I've seen Aces and Eights comparison as well. I have no problems with going back and revisiting what were decent storylines and seeing them done right the second time round, because arguably you could say both of those ended up falling flat somewhere. When you look at Nexus, they lost SummerSlam and their whole momentum was completely derailed. You could have built 1 or 2 real new stars there. You should have had a world champion in Wade Barrett and you didn't get it. You look at Aces and Eights, as the reveals went on, it started to make less and less sense. When Bully Ray was revealed as the main leader, it kind of didn't add up with everything that had been going on beforehand. It was as if the war was just being done for the sake of it over fans' eyes for many, many months. So you look at it and think to yourself, well, if this was done correctly, like you say, it could be a very good angle. I see comparisons to the NWO as well. If you look at it, the spray cans as well in there. If you want to be even that way, Chainsaw Charlie had the chainsaw back in the day, you know, for all those that want to just find things to compare it to. But being serious here, I agree with you. I think that this has got legs to run with, and I think if it's done right, it can really build into it. And there's lots of different methods you could go. Your method is my favourite method, and I'll say that very quickly. I like the idea of NXT superstars who have either felt they've been overlooked, who haven't come to the main roster quickly, or have seen people pass them by, perhaps to get opportunities on Raw and SmackDown. Even if we know in real life certain superstars perhaps don't want to be rushed to Raw or SmackDown, you look at it and say to themselves, well, in storyline terms, they can say, well, hang on, Matt Riddle wasn't around very long. I've been in NXT for 4 or 5 years. Hint, hint, with maybe some of the superstars that maybe I'm thinking should be leading this. And you think to yourself, well, you know, those superstars have got the opportunities and we're still here. Why have we not got the call to come to Raw or SmackDown? Maybe, like you say, that this is a way of changing the game. Last year, NXT won Survivor Series, and this is their way of saying that we are the dominant brand here, and we can come in, we can just take over Raw and SmackDown. We don't like the way that some of the people that have been working in our locker room have been brought up and then been made to feel like an afterthought. Raw and SmackDown is the past and NXT is the future and is the main flagship show. I mean, that would be a monumental storyline, that NXT invasion that people have wanted for so long. There are other different ways you can look at it. I mean, if it's Raw and SmackDown superstars, for example, as they've been invading both shows, maybe it's people who feel they've been overlooked on those shows. Maybe people have been stuck in catering for far too long. Maybe they think to themselves, where's my opportunity? If I'm not going to get it, I'm going to take it. And I'm going to take baseball bats and a chainsaw, apparently, at the same time. We could have Evolve. WWE have purchased Evolve. What about that? You know, you've taken our opportunity. You've bought our company. We've got some great talent down there that were the future of the company, but we're going to make them the present because we are going to evolve the product of what we see from this stale Raw, this stale SmackDown, and we're going to show that, you know, the future is now. I mean, Evolve, for me, is almost like the feeder to NXT and could even become, and perhaps should become, what is now that sort of, you know, developmental kind of brand, because NXT has literally become the third brand. One other idea that could come out there as well is that, what about those released WWE superstars? I mean, they've got retribution, surely more than most. Some of them haven't been snapped up places. I mean, Rusev or Miro, if you want, has claimed to have retired from the in-ring competition. Leo Rush at one point was suggesting that as well, but has come back and done an appearance. What about Mike Bennett and Maria? I mean, there are people where you look at it and think, well, hang on, they could be a stable of people that have been re-signed and would have retribution, and there would be a purpose to the storyline. I mean, there's no reason why it couldn't be done. So there's lots of different avenues that they could go down here. There's lots of different potentials and storylines. I think we're going to get some form of maybe a mixture in some way of this. I do like the idea of NXT superstars only the most, because I think that that has a nice little steam with it of unity. But I think we could see a combination here of superstars. I think we could get a couple of call-ups from this. I think we could get a couple of returns, maybe, that have not been featured on TV for a long time. And I think as well, we could just have those one or two that have been stuck in catering, and it gives them a chance to do something. But either way, whatever happens, it's going to be very exciting to see where it's going to lead to. I'll be giving predictions of those in the next question of which superstars right now I would book it as. But as for a storyline going forward, I know that there are Raw spoilers out already. I've avoided them so much because I like the excitement. I don't like the spoilers. I personally think that it wouldn't surprise me if they did the same thing as SmackDown on Raw tonight, just to do it on both brands. It would feel a little bit like, oh, we've seen this already, but if you're going to do it over a course of both weeks, it wouldn't surprise me if they tried to do that. I'd like them to see it destroy the backstage areas as well at some point. Maybe take out, people in the locker room. Maybe we find that these people, have attacked, like, I don't know, maybe sort of like a Viking Raiders, a Street Profits. You take up those sort of like mid-card area teams to begin with. It'd be great for them to go in straight to the top, but then at the same time, a bit me would like to save that for like a SummerSlam kind of moment. I mean, I don't know at this point if Drew McIntyre will be the one to retain the championship, but wouldn't it be a great thing to see him jumped at the end of the show, or see him attacked, or the WWE champion attacked at the end of a show? I think that really puts volumes out there. And one thing we have to really remember here is that Payback is coming, was the line that was used on Raw last week. What pay-per-view has been added to the calendar 1 week after SummerSlam is WWE Payback. So just maybe, this is what that pay-per-view has the purpose for. And all of a sudden, from what I said was a very lackluster idea of a pay-per-view coming in 1 week after SummerSlam, all of a sudden feels very exciting. For me, if you look at reveals, I wouldn't reveal everybody straight away. I think that would be, giving everything away in one go. I'd like to see slow builds and reveals, and it wouldn't surprise me, going into your question, if we got to a situation where people are being swapped here and there throughout the process, because if someone's not doing something on that show, they're not being booked, you can put them under a mask and you can put them out there. It keeps people guessing, because, I mean, if you look at it last week, the voices were being used. Some hair was exposed on one, as one of the people I thought it was going to be. So if you don't want it to be those people at the end, and rumour has it that WWE sadly hasn't long-term thought out this storyline at the moment. Hopefully they are building plans now for it going on in the future, because it could be something that could really work. This is, for me, the real thing that's connected with all these different ideas that they've thrown at the wall last week. It would be kind of nice to see some thought put into it and a purpose and where they could be going for with it. But they have lots of potentials, and I think that's the exciting thing. And when they work out the plan that they're going to go for with it, it wouldn't surprise me to keep throwing different people under it, because at that point then, it makes it less obvious when we get the natural reveals. As well, another way you could look at it as well is that just because we had 5 people there on SmackDown, what's to say the stable stops at 5? What's to say that maybe it was 5 different people on Raw? What's to say that there isn't a couple of other members that are higher ups, if you want? Let's take it to another former stable. What about the corporate ministry back in the day and had a higher power, someone that was directing the purpose of all this, and maybe that can lead into what could be a future question coming up in 2 questions time here on AskSCW. But carrying on with Retribution, our next question comes from Damo Craig. Who do you think is in the Retribution group? Could you make out any of the voices? Well, I certainly could make out one of the hair, because it fell out of the back of the mask there, which was clearly for me Vanessa Bourne, who was someone I thought would be in this stable, looking at the female participants that could have been in there. Chelsea Green was someone that could have been. I think Dana Brooke was another shout, but I thought Vanessa Bourne, she's someone that's been rumoured to be coming up to the main roster since January, and they've not found a place for her to put her in. Aaliyah, of course, who was her tag team partner, has gone off with the Robert Stone brand. So, I mean, literally, you look at it and say, well, she is someone that's been waiting to find her way in for a long time. Chelsea Green as well, someone who recently has been looking to find a way in. It wouldn't surprise me if we had more than one female in this stable, but I would say Vanessa Bourne was definitely under the mask on SmackDown. As for a voice, I felt like, from listening to a lot of Up, Up, Down, Down, I felt Xavier Woods just might have been under the mask. I could be wrong, but it's a long shot feeling. But I think it would be a great way to bring him back. It would split up the New Day as well. It would kind of give them a different, fresh direction to go. So that would be very exciting to see. So I kind of hope that happens. And Xavier Woods will help me go into leading to the next question in a minute. But if you want me to go for the members that I want it to be, I want Tommaso Ciampa as the leader. I think that if he was the leader of this, he could be from NXT, someone that feels that he's been overlooked. He could go in with the Twitter beef he had with Randy Orton. And also, he's gone quiet on Twitter. I think he's cleared his Twitter. Same as Dominik Dijakovic has done the same. So I think those two should be the two top guys in that group. I think they would have a lot of, could be the muscle of the group. And we could see then perhaps as the smaller guys underneath it, we could see some other people, perhaps people that have been linked to another storyline. So if I said the names of like Xavier Woods, maybe Ali, maybe you can ring a bell where we're going to be going as we go into our next question. I'd like to see Ricochet involved in it as well. I don't know, I just think for him it would really freshen up his gimmick. I'm not a fan of the gimmick that he's currently got. And as I say, if we're going to have one or two female members, because why not have these sort of group as well, Retribution, have two females that could go after the tag team division. It's not always about the women's championship. And I think if it's someone like Vanessa Bourne and Chelsea Green that were in that role, I think it would make more sense for them to go for an undercard championship, arguably, than to go for the main championships at this point. So for me, I'd like to see them in the tag team reign. But let's go on to the next question to continue on with this Retribution, which comes from my good friend Ricky Sycamore. And he asks, do you think the WWE hacker could be linked to Retribution in any way? Yes, I do, and I love that you've asked this question, so thank you very much for this. Literally, as I said, Ali, Xavier Woods were linked with the hacker storyline. Have you noticed with the hacker when we were seeing that little office for all those many months, dressed the same as what we've had with these people coming in? Of course, you could argue and say it was the ninjas, but let's not go down that route, shall we? But looking at it, there is a connection there. I mean, as well, they're kind of taking over the show in different ways, whether it's the lighting, whether it's, the sound on the microphones being cut out. Before, they had control of the screen and showing when, the Dolph Ziggler Otis stuff was going on. They were following Dolph Ziggler for a long time. And that was kind of how that was revealed at that point. But yeah, I think that there could be some connection here, and maybe the higher power, if we want to go down that route, as I've said in earlier questions, could be linked to who the hacker actually is, because we had multiple voices as the hacker, which threw every different direction. The rumour was a little while ago that WWE had dropped the storyline but hadn't forgotten it and was hoping to bring it back at a later point. Well, what I think is going to be brought back into this, I think it would be really cool. I think that these people then would have control over the show in different ways. It wouldn't necessarily just have to be cutting people's mics out or the lighting. If it is people that can hack into the systems, reveal truths of what's going on and the Retribution, maybe there really is an underlining storyline here of different ways of what Retribution they're after. It may not be just one simple goal of what they're after. And if you've got more than one simple goal, this actual storyline can last a long time, because I find with WWE, a lot of the storylines have a one idea, which without a progression of where it's going to go further. If you've got 5 or 6 people who've come together here with 4 or 5 different agendas that say there's a tag team involved in there somewhere, and with those different agendas, they can take after one, after one, after one, and we all of a sudden have maybe 8 or 9 months of storytelling before we get to the point where WWE decides it's probably the time to break them up. But that gives you the momentum, it gives you the steam, and hopefully as well would keep the excitement up, because once the names are revealed, depending who they are, there is a chance that maybe this storyline can fall a little bit flat. So I'm hoping that this is going to lead to something good. And like you say, if the hacker was to be involved, I think it would be very exciting. And I think with timing as well, I think it all comes down to what our next question is, of how successful this storyline can be and perhaps will be, and determine how long it will go on for. And that question, rounding off our Retribution questions, comes from Dan the Man Williams, Mr. DWE himself on YouTube. Do you think that Retribution and Raw Underground can help with ratings for the future? Well, I think this is going to be the telltale whether these things stick around for the long term, whether they can have something in them or not, because if they're going to be ratings pullers, yeah, I think WWE will keep doing them. I think if they show to not be so successful, I think that you can see things knocked on the head pretty quickly. My hope is that with Retribution, that it's going to be definitely a ratings puller, and I think Raw Underground definitely in the short term definitely will. Again, they need further direction. It's a case of saying to yourself, right, okay, it's good having that initial idea. Where is the next step after that, and where is the step after that? You need to start planting in some long-term booking here with these storylines. Now, granted, if this stuff has been thrown at the wall initially, yeah, we know there's probably not so much thought process in it, but if you can spend over the last course of this week thinking what you can do for the next month, 2 to 3 months, then you can build it 3 to 6 months. You can start to make something of this and make these things successful. The Hurt Business has taken over the Raw Underground side of things, and as we've said on This Week in Wrestling this past week, a few ideas I came up with, maybe because I wasn't such a fan of it last week, a few ideas maybe that could improve it. What if it became a place where it's almost like the new VIP lounge? Maybe MVP changes this with Shane McMahon, and it becomes almost like a gentleman's club. It becomes a place where, yeah, you get some of that MMA style action, but really it's a place designed for more cinematic storytelling angles rather than actually having cinematic matches. Maybe it's a way of building things in a different way. Maybe you find yourself, it's almost like the new APA office. You can see MVP and Shelton Benjamin in their suits counting up people fighting for money, cigars in mouth. Lashley's the guy in the ring there. Who can take out Lashley, the MMA fighter? And everyone's just being destroyed by Lashley left, right and centre. And maybe if there's someone that could take out Lashley, maybe they find themselves as someone that's worthy of being part of the Hurt Business. Maybe there's some link in that, or maybe there's something else to it. And Shane McMahon is a key involvement with the storyline, so it's going to be key to see what Shane's involvement is here. And the key thing as well is there going to be a link between the two? That's always very interesting as well. I'm not sure at this particular point because I've got no earthly idea of what direction Raw Underground is going to go. And I think for that reason, I think a lot of people will feel the same. It was so bonkers last week. I think in the short term, ratings will go up. I think people want to see what is happening with Raw Underground. I think with Retribution, I think fans will stick around if they can continue to find enjoyment of what's going on. I know it's had mixed reviews so far, but if people are willing to give it a chance, I think the ratings will go up. People certainly will have interest of how these storylines will play out. But if there comes a point where people lose interest and maybe they're not booked so well for the next week, 2 weeks, don't be surprised if they go quickly disappearing as quick as Raw Dark or the brand to brand invitational, draft, wildcard, Raw, whatever you want. Those things come in, those things disappear very quickly. Corey Graves with that, that chair thing where Sami Zayn said that AEW on the mic lasted a week. If they think it's something that's not going to work, don't be surprised to see him pull it very quickly from WWE TV. But I hope, as all in all, talking about Retribution for what feels like at least the first 10 to 15 minutes of this video, I'm hopeful that we're going to get something exciting from this. I really hope that stables are something that can be done very well in WWE. They're very tasteful if done correctly. You can easily, if you've got 2 or 3 stables going along, you can make such great, easy to write storylines with those stables when they have the gang-on-gang warfare. You've only got to look at New Japan. They've built a lot of their success on stables, whether it's Bullet Club, Suzuki-gun, LIJ, Chaos, and they're all flitting in between each other, and it just makes easy storylines because you've got 4 or 5 people per stable, and you can easily have them facing off against each other, keeping matches fresh, keeping it where it makes sense within the storyline. It's very easy booking to do. I'm surprised WWE hasn't done stables like this for such a long time, really. It feels that it's been, when they have done it, they've usually done it to like 3 members as well. You look at the Shield, for example, and you just think to yourself, well, if you had 4 or 5 members per stable, you've got a chance to make storytelling so much easier on the build to the pay-per-views. So I really hope that they get this right. I really hope that it eventually can lead to maybe someone that can be fighting in the Hurt Business as well. Maybe you've got some stable versus stable warfare. Maybe another stable comes involved. I mean, at some point the Undisputed Era will probably come up as well, but we'll have to wait and see what's going to go on with all of that, with Adam Cole's new TakeOver match, which of course you can find that in This Is Wrestling Episode 3, which is available now on YouTube. But another Retribution. Let's go on to the rest of the questions we've got this week in Ask SCW. And that first question comes from Project Ditz, asking us, what do you think the payoff will be with Alexa's involvement with Bray and Braun? Well, it's very interesting, really, because it's such a bizarre direction of storytelling. It's something, again, we perhaps didn't really see coming. It started with the swamp fight, didn't it? We had kind of that hologram kind of thing with Alexa kind of posing as almost like a Sister Abigail character. They brought back the Mixed Match Challenge relationship of Braun and Alexa. And we sort of saw the Alexa kidnapping last week. This week was a bit bizarre, even though we had kind of a bit of a follow-on with the storytelling. The Fiend coming out to the ring. We went to adverts. Alexa just magically turned up in the same clothes after adverts. But we kind of felt that she almost found a way into stopping the Fiend from putting the mandible claw on. Again, she always found a way of manipulating the Fiend, which was kind of interesting with the hand almost on the face. Braun was on screen as the monster. We've got the match for SummerSlam, and he said that he didn't care about Alexa Bliss. I wonder if that's going to cost him somewhere down the line. I mean, I'm not sure if we're going to see an alignment with Alexa Bliss and Fiend long term. I certainly, like I said, I don't want to see her as Sister Abigail. For me, it just doesn't really fit. Sister Alexa, I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not feeling that, but I wouldn't be surprised if she costs Braun the championship at this point, because she's involved in the storyline heavily now, to the point that you almost feel more interested in what's going on with Bray and Alexa after SmackDown than you did Braun. Braun's kind of become the afterthought, which isn't really the best look when he's your Universal Champion. But I must admit, at this feeling, I don't see him as champion for much longer at this particular point. But he did scream to be the monster. Maybe, as I say, week in and week out, I want my monster back. Maybe we're finally going to get that with Braun Strowman. It would certainly put a bit more investment and interest within his character once again. But honest answer for you, I've not a clue where it's going to go with Alexa in this, but I wouldn't be surprised if I had to make a guess at this early stage that she would be the one to cost Braun the Universal Championship at SummerSlam in some form or capacity, maybe by distracting Braun maybe in the match, and maybe the Fiend finds a way to get the mandible claw on to win his championship back at last. Our next question is a retro question from Kevin. Thank you, Kevin, for this. I do like a good retro question. I always thought that Vader was a missed opportunity for WWE. He came in hot, but worked his way down the card. What would you have done differently with Vader during his WWE run? Well, he did come in very hot, didn't he? I mean, I remember when he came in and he took up Yokozuna at WrestleMania 12. I remember, of course, the Vader Bomb on Jim Ross as well. I remember them being really sort of built up hot. It was part of I believe it was part of Camp Cornette, if I'm not mistaken, as well, through '96, and was at SummerSlam against Shawn Michaels for the WWE Championship. Now, I must admit, knowing what followed on from them, we got HBK against Mankind at the following In Your House, was one of my favourite In Your Houses ever. So I wouldn't change that. I wouldn't take that back for the world. So I think that Vader as well, not long coming from WCW, I think that still it was the right booking move that he lost this match to Shawn Michaels. If you look back in the rumour mill that goes along from past places, Vader was very, tough in the ring, kind of sometimes a few hard shots here and there, didn't go down so well with the Click, and apparently that is something to do with what changed his momentum and run. But if we remember, with any good heel stable, heel act in history of wrestling, when they have a big loss, they come back and they find a way to get the heat back. I would have found a way for Vader to continually get that heat back. If he has a big loss, he comes back and destroys HBK the next night on Raw. A few Vader bombs here and there. Yes, he's maybe not initially the number one contender. Maybe he has to work his way through a couple of opponents to get there. But I remember we got to about Survivor Series time, and Shawn lost the belt to Psycho Sid, if I'm not mistaken, around this point. He did win the belt back, and then he lost his smile and went away. And we kind of got a bit of a mess leading into WrestleMania 13, which then led to Taker versus Psycho Sid. For me, if I was going to change things at this point, this is where Vader would come in. I would have had him win the belt at Survivor Series, personally. I would have actually had him retain it at the Royal Rumble over Shawn Michaels, who was losing his smile at the time. That way we could have gone through further to the pay-per-views. Maybe Taker wins the Royal Rumble instead of Steve Austin. Now, I know that would be a bit controversial because of the fact that we got that submission match, and of course I wouldn't want to change that, so Steve Austin for that point would have to lose the Royal Rumble. So Taker would have won the Royal Rumble in '97. Steve Austin could have perhaps been the runner-up for that point, could have done the elimination of Bret Hart, who would have finished third. I think that would have tied that storyline in still very nicely, and then we could have got a roll into WrestleMania 13 with Undertaker and Vader. Vader would have actually got a WrestleMania main event, which I think would have been pretty cool for him at that point. And I think once he's in and around that main event scene, I think he then hopefully would stay there. He'd find a way to keep himself amongst it. But I do agree, it was a missed opportunity. The guy clearly for me was always money. I loved his work in WCW. I was so happy when he joined WWE in the mid-90s. And yeah, I mean, it just worked out. I mean, I remember watching a recap of SummerSlam 98 just recently, and Vader was on Heat on the show before instead of on SummerSlam. It just shows in such a quick couple of years how far down the pecking order he fell. And yeah, it's a shame because the guy for me is a legend. He's one of the best big men ever to be in the ring, and yeah, I think he could have been a big time player for WWE had he been booked slightly differently. So if I was going to book it one way, I think that's how I would have done it. But yeah, let me know how you'd have done it in the comments below. It's time for our Impact question of the week. We need at least one every week, I think. And Ty World Order is here in house with our question for us this week, asking, how great of a pure heel is Eric Young turning out to be this trip around in Impact? I am only familiar with his comedy stuff as I wasn't watching wrestling during his other runs. How do you like the new EY so far compared to his old persona? Well, I must admit, I mean, I feel to myself that Eric Young is actually putting out his best work right now. If you look at it and think to yourself with Eric Young with his previous runs, Team Canada, I remember him as a face as the champion back in the mid-10s, and I must admit that we have seen darker sides of Eric Young in previous times, but I really feel that you can just see that chip on his shoulder right now. He's got a point to prove, and the way he's being booked right now, he's come out loose, all guns blazing in Impact Wrestling. It's something really fun to see. When you look at EC3, I mean, someone else that's probably a big time name that's got a big time change, he's being teased and being delivered his story, you know, in small pieces. Eric Young has come out all guns blazing, and I really do believe that we are about to see something very special with EY. I think we could be on the cusp of seeing the best work of his career, and I must admit, when he won the championship before in Impact, I actually felt that it didn't feel like the right timing. Something didn't quite feel right with it in my personal opinion of that title reign. I feel this time round, I think if he's built like this, he could be one of the top guys in Impact through 2021, 2022 without any fails or question marks. He did put a big statement on Rich Swann when he come back at the pay-per-view. He did the same last week in a great main event go-home angle for the cliffhanger for this week. It'd be interesting to see what they're going to do going forward. I do think we're going to get him and Eddie Edwards for the championship, and I do think it's too soon for him to win it at this rate. We want to see the Maniac come out further. What's a great way to push a Maniac? Have him have that big loss in that championship match just to push him over that edge further. I think we're in for some golden stuff with Eric Young in this sort of era now. He's back in Impact Wrestling, and I can't wait to see how it's going to play out. He's definitely been the highlight of the last few weeks, and that even surpasses perhaps some of my favourites that I've always been shouting about, saying how good they are. But EY has been an absolute star, and I can't wait to see what he's going to continue to bring to the table. So long may it continue, and yeah, like you say, he's had some comedy personas, he's had some different personas, but this persona for me feels connected at the right place, the right time. The world-class Maniac is back, and yeah, I think he's here to stay, and he's got some good things ahead of us here in Impact. Continuing on with Ty World Order of a second question. How many people in a tag match would you reckon is too many? 12 or more? And how many announcers? 4 or 10? Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting question. I mean, the thing is, I mean, this is probably based off AEW last week. We had the 12-man tag, and the week before we had the 10-man tag. The thing is that when you've got more people in a match, less people have less time to get themselves over in that match, and they need to make their time count. And ironically enough, I felt that the teams in the 12-man tag had more of a better match than the people in the 10-man tag. So I think it depends who's in the matches, really. But if you look this week, it was booked to perfection, really. I think the 12-man tag in AEW. You had the way where the FTR were written out of the match. Hangman Page actually picked FTR over the Elite members for that time period. The Dark Order got their big victory, and they felt important, arguably the first time in a little while for me. I sometimes have a bit of a hot and cold feeling with the Dark Order, and at some points it almost felt like a 6-on-3 match, so it felt like a big handicap match at some point as well, leaving the faces almost feeling to the point of like, how again they're going to come back from this until Hangman came back out. But timing, camera work, everything was perfect in that match, so it was done very well. I personally feel that a 10-man is usually the limit you should go, but I do think that occasionally it's nice to do these big matches. But again, I think it depends who's in the matches of what makes a good match or a bad match in amongst these multi-people matches. As for announcers, I'm a fan of the 2-man team or 2-person team if you want. If you look at any good commentary team, I think that they work best when they're, working one-on-one with each other. It's okay with a 3-person team, but I don't like any more 4 becomes far too many. People are fighting to get their word in, and there has been occasions where we've had even more than 4, and it's just a mess when you see that. So for me personally, I'm much more in favour of when you see the 2-person teams. Regardless of, you look at Impact, for example, Josh and Madison Rain. I prefer Don Callis, though, if I'm honest. You can look at NXT. I actually think that it's okay with NXT commentary, but I think Mauro and Beth could do it on their own personally, although I do miss Nigel McGuinness, if I'm being honest, at this particular moment. Personally for me, I prefer 2-person teams. I think that works better when it comes to announcing. Noob and Co. Our next question is for us now here on AskSCW. Instead of signing former WWE superstars, can AEW sign some female talent from the indies? Do you think Asuka and Alexa Bliss will have a change of character towards SummerSlam? And who will face Bayley for the SmackDown Women's title at SummerSlam? Well, let's kick things off with Bayley, shall we? Because that, for me, definitely one of my favourite points of SmackDown last week was the way we were built to a branded battle royal to find out the contender. It almost feels that this is a good excuse to give Bayley someone different to face because she's kind of beaten everybody. But I wouldn't be surprised if Naomi was given another chance. I feel she's probably the only female in the SmackDown roster right now that I could see being given that opportunity. But I think it's a great excuse to bring someone in from NXT. I'd love to see Rhea Ripley in that role. I think that that is the money match if you're going to put a match together. I think Rhea Ripley and Bayley for the championship would get Rhea Ripley out of the storytelling on NXT, and probably could bring her to SmackDown full time as well. I would be quite interested in seeing that. I do think Bayley's title run is starting to get a bit... although it's been lengthy, it's been creditable, I kind of feel that it's probably time for a change. And if we're not going to have the Sasha Banks feud right now, maybe it would not be the worst move to have Rhea Ripley come in, win the belt. Maybe in a few months Bayley can win it back, and then when we're ready to do this problem with Bayley and Sasha Banks, maybe it goes on there. Because if it's going to go until WrestleMania and Bayley holds the championship for another 8 months, I think that that's too much. So maybe we do need to have a small break somewhere for a couple of months before we get into that place. And maybe, just maybe, it comes a point where Sasha loses the Raw Women's Championship, Bayley loses the SmackDown, and then they have only the tag team belts to concentrate on for the time being. And when they lose those belts, that's when the problem's really kicking with the two of them, because they could hold those belts for certainly the foreseeable future. There's not a big tag team division. They've done arguably great work with those tag team championships, and it would keep them in all brands, and a period where Raw is probably missing Charlotte Flair and as well Becky Lynch as well at this particular moment. Another one that I could see coming into face Bayley would be Shayna Baszler, because of the fact that was sort of mentioned on Raw. We had the match with Sasha and Baszler as well, so maybe that could be another competitor as well in that place. So if I had to pick, I think one from each brand, those would be the 3 that I think would be the most likely. If I had to put my money on it, I would go with Shayna Baszler just at this particular point. Not that I think it's the right option of the 3 people I've mentioned, but just because of the fact that they have had some actual interaction. But I think it would be a good place to bring Rhea Ripley in, so I would love to see her as the person to win that Battle Royal. As for looking elsewhere there, and looking at with the AEW, yeah, I mean, I've not been watching the Deadly Draw Tag Tournament. I know that Tanaya Conti was involved in it. She was teaming with Anna Jay. So it would be nice to see if she was to get signed. But they've got 16 women that are in this tournament, featured on YouTube. Bit of a shame it's not on Dynamite, if I'm being brutally honest. But at the same time, I do look at it and think to myself that, yeah, I mean, it's great to bring in some big names, but if you've got talent, it doesn't matter if they're people that have been wrestling for years or if they're people that are coming in and just starting out. AEW is always going to be benefiting from bringing through their own talent rather than actually bringing people in that from other places, because only so often can you do that before you're seen as bringing in the rejects from another company and then putting them over instead. You kind of make yourself look like a second-rate brand. So, I mean, of course, they need to make their own stars as well, and hopefully through this Deadly Draw Tag Team Tournament they've got, maybe they might find 1 or 2 underlining stars, and that maybe they can sign them and maybe they can bring them into the women's division and find purpose for that division further going forward. As last and not least, with Asuka and Alexa Bliss, I mean, it's potential. Don't really see so much character change with Asuka, but I want to see a more angry, a more serious side rather than a less fun-loving side. I want Asuka to get back to the NXT Asuka that we had, who kind of didn't matter who she faced. She found a way to win. She was dominant in doing so, and yeah, she was someone that took the game very seriously. You kind of feel that it's been a less serious Asuka in places during 2020, so maybe we could get that rather than actually seeing the old character that she had in Japan. As for Alexa Bliss, I mean, as we discussed earlier in the video, it wouldn't surprise me if she cost Braun the championship at SummerSlam. I kind of hope that we don't get her as the Sister Abigail kind of character, but maybe a change of character, something some people may feel she needs to freshen her up a bit. I personally just think that maybe a heel Alexa Bliss would be good because she does a better work there. So if that would be the change that would be in place, I would be fine with that. But I wouldn't necessarily do too much more if it was me booking personally. Carmine Rocco, our next question here. When he eventually makes his return, do you think Edge should have one more world title run? Yes, I do. If we're looking at it, Edge, he's had a great career. And when we looked back in 2011, he didn't get to finish things on his own terms, which was a shame at the time. But we're so pleased that he's been able to come back in 2020. Just a shame that he picked up the injury against Randy Orton. I expect him to finish that rivalry when he first comes back. But if you look for a championship world title run, I'd love to see it. I mean, personally, I think that he's creditable and he could build a new star in being the champion and putting someone else over as the champion that they defeated Edge to win that belt. I think that he would be great at building up new talent. There's lots of dream matches I want to see him have as well, like AJ Styles, Seth Rollins, maybe a Samoa Joe as well. So, I mean, there's certainly those types of matches that I want to see him have. So, he'd need to be in and around that world title picture for sure. So, for me, I'd be all for it. I think that he would be a great world champion if he was to come back. And it's always good to put over the younger talent and the newer guys and build new stars. But sometimes you have to use those legends you've got to do that. And I'm sick of seeing Goldberg as being that guy. Edge, for me, clearly can still go. And I think that he would be a much more worthy person to be a world champion in that position than, say, someone like a Goldberg in 2020 or probably when he returns 2021. Straight Edge Josh with our next question now. What wrestling move do you think is overplayed the most? The super kick or the Canadian Destroyer? Both. Literally both. I mean, it feels that both moves are used heavily in lots of matches. If I had to pick one that's overdone more than the other, I would say the super kick. Literally, it's been overdone to the point that it was once a great finishing move and now is literally just something that's done 20 times in a match. Of course, we do have the likes of Kylie Ray that still uses it as a finishing move in Impact. But if you look at the Young Bucks, clearly skipping a leg day in the gym when they do like 20 per match every time they're in there. But yeah, the super kick is overdone massively. It feels that probably at least 40 to 50% of the roster do that. Not 40-50% do the Canadian Destroyer, but it certainly is a move that is overdone in wrestling as well. Certainly feels less special the more you see it, which is a shame really, because it is such a well special laid out move as well. But there are times these moves still have their moments where they feel special, but I think the super kick is probably the one that's slightly overdone the most. Another shout out for a move that's well overdone for me is the Shining Wizard. I find that move is done by too many people as well. I would like to see Tegan Nox with a different finishing move, if I'm being brutally honest. The shiniest of wizards, not feeling the name, not feeling the move, like I say, overdone. Even Adam Cole, I think that perhaps he actually suits the Canadian Destroyer more as his finishing move, or as he calls it, the Panama Sunrise, I believe. But yeah, there are moves that are massively overdone in wrestling, but it's just unfortunate the way it's done in 2020. And yeah, I think the super kick, it takes the lead of the lot of them. Last question this week comes from Austin Whitley. SummerSlam 2002 is my favourite SummerSlam of all time, behind 1992. What is your favourite? I really love both. I think that you've picked two really good ones there. 92, nostalgic being English. The fact that we had that SummerSlam in Wembley Stadium as well of 80,000 people, for me was a very special feeling. I wish that I could have been there, to be honest, at that particular time. The Bulldog and Bret Hart is one of the best SummerSlam matches of all time as well, which main evented. And you look at 2002, like you say, from top to bottom, that was probably the best SummerSlam of all time. Lesnar versus The Rock. You had Triple H, Shawn Michaels, Kurt Angle, Rey Mysterio. There's just so many gems in and amongst that card, and probably plenty of matches that I've not even mentioned. When you look elsewhere of other SummerSlams, there's some other ones that do stand out for me. Other ones that I like in particular would be looking at 2000, I think in particular. You've got the first TLC match with the Dudleys, the Hardleys, Edge and Christian, which is one of my favourite matches of all time. I think it's an awesome match with those guys. And literally that card from start to finish is another really solid SummerSlam. Other ones as well that I really like, 1998, The Highway to Hell, of course, with Steve Austin and Undertaker, Madison Square Garden, really good SummerSlam. And 2006, I think, is an underrated one as well. I really like that card when I was watching it on the network. not too long ago. I really popped for quite a few of the matches that were on at the time. So I think that one would probably just about take the 5th spot for me. But I'm with you. I like your 2 the most, I think, and I would go with 2002 because it's a solid card from start to finish. 2002 is arguably one of the best years in wrestling when the whole rosters, the invasion stuff was finished. They were all brought under one roof, or, you know, certainly for the big events under one roof. They had the draft and everything was just magical and felt fresh at that time, looking to try and build some new stars. So, yeah, I think 2002 is the one for me. But that's all for this week anyway for Ask SCW. Thank you for watching. As always, please like, share, subscribe, share with a friend as well. I'll see you next time here on YouTube. Take care.